Voltaire, new album Micro-Phonies out, which we'll hear some of in a minute. But first, I was a bit surprised actually. I was looking through your discography before you came in, or whatever you call these things. 10 years old, really? 10 years old, the band?
Yeah, we started when we were about 7. So.
Of course, yeah. And 11 albums. 11 albums.
You shouldn't count them.
It's quite a lot to get on. Yeah, I was surprised actually. Now, did you begin originally? I mean, through the interest of things like Can and Faust and Kraftwerk and stuff like that. Was that the original, motivation for the group, really?
Yeah, that was part of it. A lot of it was to do with people like Brian Eno, sort of from an interest in very early Roxy music and what they were doing at that time.
You've changed a lot, though, since then, and when we hear the new stuff, I think people will realise that. It's probably the most, I hesitate to use the word commercial, but it is, but in a way, they've got tunes, it's much more sort of established structure, and we can actually hear what you're saying for the first time, I think.
Yeah, I think we just sort of developed into that rather than saying, oh, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. I think it's just our own development, our own progressions meant that, really. We just sort of discovered it by accident.
I was reading about some of your early performances. I understand these usually led to hospitalisation one way or the other. What actually happened to these things?
At one of the first gig we did, I ended up in hospital. Well, I didn't have to stay, and I had to go and have my back X-rayed and things like that.
What actually happened then? What sort of an event was this?
Well, we conned our way onto a disco saying we were a rock band, and we obviously weren't. And it was about 1975, and I think people's tastes were a little bit more staid, being pre-punk and things like that, so they just seemed to take offence to us.
Well, they just really hated you, did they?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
It was really that simple,
it's quite safe to say that, yeah.
The funny thing is that you listen back to some of your early recordings, and they still make sense, really, with what's going on today. Do you think, in a way, it's rather annoying that people didn't pick up on you at the time?
I think it's inevitable, really. I think it takes time for people to accept certain ways of approaching sort of music, and I think it's just taking time for them to accept what we do and to be introduced into more mainstream things.
But this idea that really from the first live performances, you're still managing to annoy people, aren't you, even now? The people who thought they'd got the hang of what Cabaret Voltaire were all about would be surprised by what you're doing now, I suspect.
Yeah, I think we keep surprising ourselves because in a lot of cases, we don't know what we're doing either. We just sort of try different things in the studio, different experiments, and some of it works and some of it doesn't. But that's what keeps it interesting for us because it's always changing. I
was going to ask you about the way you were because, in fact, you have this. I don't know why it is really, but you always seem to have this image of very intellectual, very sort of arty band, who are trying these incredibly interesting experiments out. And I wonder if that's a bit of a responsibility, really. Whether we've got it all wrong,
It's a bit sad to feel some sort of responsibility to be experiment. You feel like Einstein or something. To get up in the morning and experiment. But we don't take ourselves that seriously. We enjoy what we do and we take that seriously. But we don't feel any pressure to do things in that vein. We feel free to move into what area we want.
And have a bit of fun as well, I suppose. Micro-Phonies is quite a sort of jokey title, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite funny what people think of it, actually. Everybody hates it.
It's actually the title of a Three Stooges film, amongst other things.
Let's hear some music from the album. This is Do Right. Do Right, there we are, from Micro-Phonies by Cabaret Voltaire. We're talking to the boys here about it. What did that actually begin life as, that Do Right bit? Because obviously it's a tape that you've been messing about with in the studio. One of you tell me. Don't look at each other, I can't believe it.
It actually started life as a piece of ranting by a member of the Ku Klux Klan in America, and we decided to lift it out and cut it up and feed it into a Fairlight and use it as backing vocals on the track.
So physically, when you come to put a track together from an idea like that, is it a terribly complicated process, very long process?
A lot of it's trial and error. In that case, it worked very well and it seemed very structured, but we didn't know that until we actually tried it. We actually fitted it into the structure quite easily, but in a lot of cases it's trial and error. Some things work and go against the grain, some things sort of slip in quite nicely. That one did.
So there's a bit of messing about really in the studio and have fun.
Yeah.
Do you think of yourself as, in the established sense of the word, as musicians, I wonder?
No, not really. We've got our own way of playing and we sort of move about from instrument to instrument, but we've never actually seen ourselves as musicians who have to sort of like keep up a standard of musicianship. We're more technicians in a lot of respects.
Yeah, I was going to say, presumably the band wouldn't exist, or certainly wouldn't exist the way you've come to exist now, without the technology, without Fairlights and things like that, would it?
Well, I mean, tape recorders have been around for quite a long time now, and that, I think, apart from Fairlights, you know, sort of using tape recorders, manipulating tape recorders has been, you know, very important to us in what we've done. So, I mean, in terms of technology, I suppose it's fairly crude. Everyone's got a tape recorder these days, usually.
Yeah, I mean, we don't actually sort of stick by things like Fairlights and emulators all the time. I mean, in a lot of cases, we do use very sort of crude, everyday stuff to actually do things, mainly because we always had our own studio and we couldn't afford a lot. So we've actually kept sort of the sophisticated equipment at bay in a lot of cases and used what we're used to and used what's available to us, really.
Must have a very brief chat about the video work, because I know this is another area of interest here. There's the theme from Earthshaker, I think, isn't it, on the album, but that's yet to come. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, it's a bit awkward at the moment because we're just trying to get the money to actually shoot the film, but it is actually in theory and in basis it is actually a film that will be shot and will come out, and there will be a proper soundtrack to it.
With a storyline, I mean, is it like a story film? Or what?
Yeah, a lot more than people would recognise from us. I think we wanted to discipline ourselves a little bit, not become too sort of esoteric, and actually tie ourselves down to the storyline. Because I mean, a lot of our influences, as well as in film, do come from sort of conventional cinema, as in sort of things that do have storylines.
What, box office hits, you mean, as opposed to
no, just more a case of cinema as established cinema as an actual medium.
Let's get a chance to see some of these as well, because I know you've been doing these interesting things, but I haven't actually ever had a chance to see it. One thing that strikes me as being really interesting, I mean, we're going to play James Brown in a minute, another track from the album. What is it, do you think, that why at this particular point in time are people in America, I mean, the black dance, the sort of hip-hop area, moving more and more into electronics, whilst the white English bands who've always been involved in electronics seem to be moving in the opposite direction towards black dance records? It's a strange mixture going on at the moment.
Well, with the American thing, I think that a lot of it is due to sort of Kraftwerk and Arthur Baker and the influence of that on the hip hop scene. So I think that's quite a strong influence.
It's a strange coincidence that it seems to be happening at the same time, though.
Yeah, I mean, and also like you say, a lot of the English music is retrospective in the sense a lot of it doesn't actually go to contemporary black music. It goes more to the sort of Motown type thing, which is quite strange because it's like a phenomena in black music happening, but the English people are going further back. So.
Well, having said all that, let's actually listen to James Brown, which of course doesn't really sound dramatically like James Brown at all, I don't think.
I thought it did.
Well, here it is, judge for yourself. James Brown.